Imagine a world where the fate of an entire continent hangs by a thread, where a single sunrise could decide whether Europe remains free or collapses under an empire that had marched undefeated for centuries. Picture the ground trembling beneath the boots of hundreds of thousands of soldiers, the sky blackened with smoke, and a city starving, terrified, and praying for a miracle that seemed impossible. This is not legend. This is not myth. This is the real story of how, in 1683, the largest army the Ottoman Empire had ever sent into Europe surrounded Vienna, Europe's gateway, and how its fall could have changed history forever. What happened on that battlefield would shape nations, redraw borders, and decide the survival of the Western world. And on that final day, in the moments before steel clashed with steel, no one knew who would live and who would vanish into history. Vienna in the summer of 1683 was a city trapped between fear and faith. Its walls, once symbols of imperial pride, now stood cracked and crumbling. Cannon fire shook the earth day and night as smoke clung to the sky like a shroud. Inside the city, people whispered rumors that the Ottoman Grand Vizier, Kara Mustafa Pasha, had promised the Sultan a gift unlike any in the empire's history. Vienna delivered into Ottoman hands. Its riches seized, its people enslaved, its churches replaced with mosques. This was not merely a siege. It was a declaration that the Ottoman Crescent would overshadow Europe once and for all. For the people inside Vienna, the fear was suffocating. Food dwindled. Horses were eaten. Even rats became scarce. Disease crept through the streets as corpses piled up. But perhaps the most terrifying sight of all came each morning when the sun rose just enough to reveal the endless sea of tents outside the walls, tents stretching farther than the eye could see, banners fluttering like a forest of color. Over 150,000 Ottoman troops had gathered, one of the largest armies assembled in early modern history. Against them were barely 15,000 defenders, exhausted, wounded, starving, but determined not to bow. Inside the Ottoman camp, Kara Mustafa believed victory was inevitable. And why shouldn't he? The Ottomans had conquered cities far stronger than Vienna. Their engineers tunneled under the walls, their cannons hammered without mercy, and their elite janissaries stood ready to storm the city the moment a breach opened. Yet Kara Mustafa made a critical mistake. He believed Vienna must be captured intact. He wanted its treasures unharmed, its structures untouched, its grandeur delivered to the Sultan as a perfect prize. So he delayed, he waited, he hesitated, and history would punish him for it. Meanwhile, far from the chaos, letters were carried across mountains, rivers, and enemy territory. Messages begging for help, pleas for salvation. And from the north, a response finally came, one that would alter the destiny of Europe. King Jan III Sobieski of Poland, a warrior king known for bravery and brilliance, answered the call. With him came an alliance of German princes, knights, and soldiers from across the Holy Roman Empire. They marched for weeks through mud, through forests, through rain, knowing that if they arrived even a day too late, Vienna would be gone. Sobieski wrote to his wife that the sight of the Ottoman camp from the hills above Vienna looked like a giant ocean of enemies. Yet he did not falter. He had come to fight. As the relief army reached the heights of the Kahlenberg mountain overlooking Vienna, dawn broke on September 12, 1683. The city lay in ruins. Smoke rose like funeral pyres, and the Ottoman army prepared its final assault. What Kara Mustafa did not realize was that the largest cavalry charge in history was minutes awaited by the Polish winged hussars, warriors famed for their deadly lances and for the great wooden wings on their backs that made a terrifying roar as they thundered into battle. Before the clash, the entire battlefield fell silent, as if time itself held its breath. Vienna's defenders preyed on shattered ramparts. Ottoman troops tightened their armor, gripping scimitars and muskets. Sobieski surveyed the field with a calm that disguised the weight of the moment. He knew that if they failed today, there would be no second chance. Europe would fall, and history would write a very different story. The first fighting erupted in the forests and villages around Vienna. Imperial troops and Polish infantry pushed downhill, clashing with Ottoman forces in brutal hand-to-hand combat. The ground turned to mud slick with blood. Muskets cracked, cannons boomed, and smoke rolled across the hills. The battlefield became a maze of chaos shouts, screams, and the constant thunder of artillery echoing through the valley. Inside Vienna, the defenders heard the distant roar of battle and realized help had finally arrived. Morale surged. They launched their own assaults from the city walls, desperate to hold out until the relief army broke through. For the first time in weeks, hope flickered inside the besieged city. Kara Mustafa, however, still believed victory could be his. He ordered wave after wave of soldiers to hold the heights and crush the approaching Christian armies. The Ottomans fought fiercely, and for hours, the battle could have gone either way. Dust and smoke covered the hills. The air was thick with gunpowder and ash. Thousands fell on both sides. But then came the moment that would echo through history. As the sun dipped low, Sobieski saw an opening, a break in the Ottoman lines, a weakness he had waited for all day. He turned to his winged hussars, their armor gleaming, their wings towering above their shoulders like the silhouettes of mythical creatures, and he gave the order. What followed was the largest cavalry charge ever recorded. 18,000 horsemen, Polish hussars, German knights, Austrian cavalry surged down the hill like a tidal wave of steel. The earth shook beneath their hooves. The sound of their charge rolled across the battlefield like thunder, drowning out cannon fire. Ottoman soldiers looked up and saw death descending upon them. Many fled. Others braced for impact. None could stop the momentum. The hussars slammed into the Ottoman ranks with devastating force. Lances shattered shields, horses trampled infantry, and the Ottoman line crumbled under the sheer weight and speed of the attack. Sobieski himself led the charge, cutting straight toward Kara Mustafa's command tent. Panic swept through the Ottoman army. What had moments before been a fortress of tents and soldiers turned into chaos, men screaming, horses running wild, banners falling, commanders losing control. Within minutes, the tide of the entire siege shifted. The Ottomans broke. They retreated in disorder, abandoning cannons, supplies, and their hopes of conquering Vienna. Kara Mustafa, realizing the battle was lost, fled the field. And for the first time in 54 days, the gates of Vienna opened not to surrender, but to embrace liberation. When Sobieski entered the city, he was greeted as a savior. The defenders, gaunt and exhausted, lifted him onto their shoulders. He looked around at the ruins, the smoke, the scars of battle, said words that would be remembered for centuries. Veni vidi, Deus vicet. I came, I saw, God conquered. The aftermath was swift. Kara Mustafa was executed by order of the Sultan, strangled with a silk cord for his failure. The Ottoman advance into Europe was halted forever, and the Battle of Vienna became a turning point, one of the greatest clashes between empires, cultures, and armies in world history. But beyond the strategy, beyond the politics, lies a deeper truth. The Battle of Vienna is a story of desperation, courage, and the fragile line between survival and annihilation. It is the story of a city that refused to die, an army that refused to retreat, and a king who refused to abandon Europe to its fate. It is a reminder that history often hinges on the bravery of a few and the timing of a single decision. And on that September evening in 1683, as the sun set over Vienna, Europe breathed again, saved by one of the most extraordinary battles ever fought.